The Pursuit of Happiness, Chapter 1 Summary is a guide to happiness possible, and if possible, is it desirable? Daniel G. Brinton. Daniel G. Brinton's The Pursuit of Happiness was first published in 1893. The first chapter begins Part I, Happiness as the Aim of Life, and asks a fundamental question. Can happiness actually be studied and pursued intelligently, and should happiness be considered one of the main purposes of human life? Project Gutenberg plus 11. The central question, can happiness be pursued? Brinton starts by questioning whether the pursuit of happiness is a meaningful goal at all. Many people believe that happiness cannot be deliberately achieved. According to this view, constantly trying to become happy may actually prevent happiness. Happiness, they argue, comes naturally when a person is engaged in something greater than himself. Brinton acknowledges this criticism but does not accept it. He believes that if happiness is an important part of human life, then there should be some way of understanding the conditions that produce it. He compares the situation to other areas of human knowledge. We study health because we want to remain healthy. We study education because we want to develop the mind. Similarly, we can study happiness to understand how human beings can live better lives too. Is the pursuit of happiness selfish? One of the strongest objections Brinton considers is that pursuing personal happiness might make a person selfish. If everyone focuses only on his or her own enjoyment, society could become divided. A person might think, I only care about what makes me happy. Such an attitude could lead to selfishness, exploitation, and neglect of other people. Brinton, however, makes an important distinction between pursuing happiness and pursuing selfish pleasure. He does not argue that we should ignore other people in order to satisfy ourselves. Instead, he believes that genuine happiness can be connected with relationships, social responsibility, useful work, and helping others. The problem is therefore not happiness itself. The problem is a narrow understanding of happiness. 3. Why do people seek happiness? Brinton argues that human beings naturally seek happiness. People may have different ambitions, cultures, occupations, and personalities, but underneath these differences there's a common desire to experience a satisfying and meaningful existence. Some people seek wealth, some seek knowledge, some seek love, some seek power, some seek recognition, some seek peace and freedom. Although their immediate goals are different, these goals are often pursued because people expect them to contribute to a happier or more satisfying life. Therefore, Brinton suggests that the desire for happiness is not something artificial that society has created. It is deeply connected with human nature. 4. Happiness should not be confused with immediate pleasure. An important idea developed throughout the book begins here. Happiness is more complicated than simply experiencing pleasure. A person may enjoy something for a few minutes without being genuinely happy. For example, eating delicious food may give temporary pleasure. Buying something expensive may create excitement. Winning a competition may produce intense satisfaction, but these experiences do not automatically create a happy life. Brinton's larger argument is that happiness must be understood as a condition of the whole person, rather than as a collection of temporary enjoyable moments. This distinction becomes even clearer in Chapter 2, where Brinton specifically examines the relationship between happiness and pleasure. The book's contents describe happiness as something that is built upon pleasurable feelings but is not identical with pleasure. Project Gutenberg plus 15. The argument against rejecting enjoyment. Some philosophical and religious traditions have treated pleasure with suspicion. They have suggested that a serious or morally valuable life should rise above enjoyment. Brinton challenges the idea that enjoyment itself is wrong. He asks us to consider a simple question. If human beings naturally desire happiness, why should that desire automatically be considered morally inferior? According to Brinton, enjoyment is not necessarily sinful, weak, or selfish. The important issue is what kind of enjoyment we seek and how we obtain it. There is a significant difference between satisfying a selfish desire at another person's expense and experiencing happiness through friendship, knowledge, useful work, love, or appreciation of life. Thus, Brinton does not condemn enjoyment. Instead, he wants people to understand it better. 6. A happy person can contribute to others. Brinton makes another important observation. A person who possesses happiness is in a better position to spread happiness to others. Think about everyday life. A person who is constantly bitter, frustrated, and dissatisfied may find it difficult to encourage others. On the other hand, someone who has developed inner satisfaction can often make other people feel better through kindness, friendship, and generosity. This means that personal happiness does not necessarily conflict with social happiness. In fact, Brinton suggests that the two can support one another. A society made up of individuals who are emotionally and mentally healthy is likely to be healthier itself. 7. Happiness as something that can be learned. This is perhaps the chapter's most important practical message. Brinton believes that people can be educated about happiness. If happiness were completely controlled by luck, there would be little reason to study it. But if our habits, attitudes, choices, relationships, and understanding of life influence our happiness, then we can improve our lives by learning about those factors. This is why Brinton treats happiness almost like a subject of study. We can ask what makes people happy, what destroys happiness. Why are some people satisfied while others remain dissatisfied? How much does happiness depend on money? How much depends on health? What role do relationships play? What role does education play? Can our habits increase or decrease happiness? Can suffering sometimes contribute to a deeper form of happiness? These questions form the foundation for the rest of the book. The later chapters examine the definition of happiness, pleasure, its distribution among people, self-education, physical and mental constitution, surroundings, work, money, relationships, morality, and even suffering. Atlantic Books Plus 18. Happiness is not simply a selfish goal. Brinton wants readers to avoid a common misunderstanding. When he says that people should pursue happiness, he is not saying that people should live only for themselves. True happiness can involve self plus other people plus society. A person may experience happiness through friendship, family, love, intellectual development, useful work, and service. Therefore, the pursuit of happiness can actually encourage better social behavior. For example, if helping another person gives us genuine satisfaction, then helping others becomes part of our own happiness. This creates an interesting relationship. Doing good for others can make us happier, while our own happiness can make us better able to do good for others. 9. Why science or guide to happiness matters. Brinton's purpose is not to give readers a simple formula such as, do this one thing and you will always be happy. He wants to investigate happiness from different perspectives. The book itself is structured as a broad study of happiness. It examines happiness as the aim of life, defines happiness, compares different pleasures, considers how happiness is distributed, and later studies physical constitution, surroundings, luck, occupation, money, sensory and emotional pleasures, intellect, religion, individuality, morality, friendship, marriage, and suffering. Atlantic Books. So Chapter 1 acts as the foundation for the entire book. Before explaining how to become happier, Brinton first has to establish that happiness is worth studying. The deeper message of Chapter 1, Brinton's argument, can be reduced to a simple chain of ideas. Human beings naturally seek happiness. Down arrow. Therefore, the desire for happiness is not something we should automatically condemn. Down arrow. But happiness should not be confused with selfish pleasure or temporary excitement. Down arrow. If happiness depends partly on how we think, act, and live, then it can be studied. Down arrow. If it can be studied, people can potentially be educated to live happier lives. Down arrow. And if individuals become genuinely happier, they may also become more capable of contributing to the happiness of others. This is the basic philosophical foundation of the book. Important lessons for modern life. Although Brinton wrote this book in the 19th century, several of his ideas are still useful. 1. Don't blindly chase pleasure. A new phone, expensive clothes, good food, entertainment, or social media likes may make us feel good temporarily. But temporary pleasure is not necessarily lasting happiness. 2. Understand yourself. Instead of constantly asking, what can I get? Ask, what actually makes my life meaningful and satisfying? 3. Happiness requires understanding. If we never examine our habits, desires, and expectations, we may spend years chasing things that don't really satisfy us. 4. Personal happiness and kindness can coexist. Being happy does not require becoming selfish. Relationships, friendship, and helping others can themselves become important sources of happiness. 5. Happiness is worth learning about. Just as we learn how to improve our physical health, Brinton encourages us to think seriously about how we can improve our mental and emotional life. Chapter 1, in one paragraph. Daniel G. Brinton's first chapter argues that the pursuit of happiness is neither foolish nor morally wrong. Although some philosophers and moral thinkers have considered happiness an inferior or selfish goal, Brinton believes that human beings naturally seek happiness and cannot simply escape this desire. The important point is to understand happiness correctly. It should not mean selfish pleasure or temporary excitement. Because happiness is influenced by our thoughts, choices, habits, and relationships, it can be studied and people can be educated about it. Moreover, personal happiness does not necessarily oppose the welfare of society. A genuinely happy person may be better equipped to contribute to the happiness of others. Therefore, Brinton establishes happiness as a legitimate and important subject of study and prepares the reader for his deeper investigation into what happiness really is and how it can be cultivated. One-line takeaway. Brinton's main message in Chapter 1 is, happiness is a natural human aim, and instead of condemning or blindly chasing it, we should understand it and learn how to cultivate it wisely.